Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive in, make sure you drop your thoughts and the lessons you took from this story in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get into it. 24 hours after saying, I do, my wife was already rewriting the script of our marriage. And let me tell you, I was not even handed a copy of the revised edition. We had just gotten back from our honeymoon in Miami Beach. 5 days of what I thought was pure bliss. But looking back, I can see the signs were already there. She spent more time on her phone than she did talking to me, always typing away to her friends about important updates and major decisions coming up. I brush it off. Newlywed excitement. Right? Wrong. The moment we walked through her front door, she was on the phone again. Not with family asking how the trip went. Not with work checking in. No, she was talking to her squad about something she kept calling the meeting. What meeting? I asked, setting our bags down in the living room. She covered the phone with her hand. Nothing you need to worry about right now. Just some girl stuff. After 2 years of dating and 6 months of engagement, I thought I knew what girl stuff meant. Shopping, gossip, maybe planning someone's birthday. I had no idea I was about to get a masterclass in psychological warfare. That evening, while I was unpacking and trying to settle back into normal life, she was in the kitchen having what sounded like a conference call. I caught bits and pieces. Tomorrow works perfectly, and he has no idea what is coming. And my personal favorite, trust me, by the end of this, he will understand how marriage really works. I walked into the kitchen during that last line. She quickly wrapped up the call. Hey, babe, she said, her voice suddenly sugary sweet. So, tomorrow afternoon the girls are coming over. We need to have a little chat about our future together. Our future? I grabbed a beer from the refrigerator. I thought we just spent 5 days talking about our future. Wasn't that what the honeymoon was for? She laughed, but it was not the laugh I'd fallen in love with. It sounded practiced, like she had rehearsed this conversation. Oh, that was the romantic stuff. This is about the practical stuff, the real stuff. I studied her face. Something had shifted, and it was not subtle. The woman who had been playful and spontaneous throughout our relationship now sounded like she was preparing for a business merger. What kind of practical stuff requires your entire friend group to be here? I asked. They're just here for support. You know how important they are to me. She moved closer, putting her hands on my chest the way she did when she wanted something. Besides, they have been married longer than us. They have experience. The word experience hung in the air like a warning bell. Experience with what exactly? With making marriages work long term. With setting proper expectations. With, she paused, searching for the right words, establishing healthy boundaries from the beginning. I finished my beer and set the empty bottle on the counter. Boundaries in our marriage that require a committee to establish. Do not be dramatic, she said. It is just a conversation. But the way she would not quite meet my eyes told me everything I needed to know. This was not going to be a conversation. It was going to be an intervention. That night, lying in bed next to my wife of exactly 25 hours, I stared at the ceiling and tried to process what was happening. During our entire relationship, she had never once mentioned needing her friend's input on our decisions. If she had a problem, she told me. If she wanted something changed, she brought it up. We talked. We compromised. We figured it out together. But now, suddenly, she needed a support group to have a conversation with her own husband. I turned to look at her. She was asleep or pretending to be, but even in the dark I could see her phone screen lighting up every few minutes with incoming messages. The group chat was apparently working overtime. The next morning, she was up early, cleaning the house like we were expecting the president. She rearranged furniture, bought fresh flowers, and even put out the good coffee cups, the ones we got as wedding gifts and never used. This seems like a lot of preparation for a casual chat, I said, watching her vacuum the living room for the second time. I just want everything to be perfect, she said. This is important. Important enough to vacuum twice. She stopped and looked at me with an expression I had never seen before. The look someone gives you right before they tell you something you really do not want to hear. Look, she said, I need you to understand something. Marriage is different from dating. There are rules now, expectations. And if we're going to make this work, we both need to be on the same page about what those are. Rules. Not agreements, not understandings, not mutual decisions. Rules. And these rules, I asked, they come from your friends? They come from experience, she said. from women who have learned what works and what is not. I sat down on our couch, the same couch where we had spent countless evenings watching movies and planning our future. Now it felt like a courtroom, and I was waiting for my sentence to be read. What if I do not agree with these rules? For just a moment, her mask slipped. The sweet, reasonable tone vanished, and I saw something cold flash in her eyes. Then we will have a problem, she said. 3 hours later, her squad arrived. 4 women, all married, all carrying notebooks like they were attending a board meeting. They hugged my wife like a fellow soldier before battle, and they looked at me like enemy territory they were about to conquer. As they settled into my living room, arranging themselves like a tribunal, I realized I was about to discover exactly what my new wife meant by how marriage really works. I had a feeling I was not going to like the lesson. The moment they sat down, I knew this was not going to be a friendly chat. These women had the energy of a corporate takeover, and I was apparently the company being acquired. My wife, Renee, took her place at the center like she was chairing a board meeting. The others arranged themselves. Tiffany on one end of the couch, Vanessa on the other, Erica in the armchair, and Sabrina unfolding a chair she had brought from home. So, Renee began, her voice taking on a weird formal tone. I thought it would be good for everyone to meet properly now that we are officially married. Everyone nodded like ambushing newlyweds was a time-honored tradition. Erica pulled out a printed document, multiple pages, stapled. We have put together some guidelines, she announced, based on our collective experience in successful marriages. Guidelines with paperwork, I said. I looked at Renee. You are serious about this? Completely serious, she replied. Marriage is a partnership, and partnerships need structure. Erica cleared her throat. Rule number 1. Financial transparency and joint decision-making for any purchase over $50. I blinked. $50? It is about respect, Sabrina chimed in. My husband learned that when he bought a fishing rod without asking me first. A fishing rod? $89, she said, as if she was still personally offended. Renee nodded along. It makes total sense. We should discuss major purchases. $50 is a major purchase. I asked. Erica continued. Rule number 2. All social plans involving other women must be pre-approved and discussed. Other women, I said slowly. Like female co-workers? Female friends I've had for years. Especially female friends, Renee said. Those relationships need boundaries now. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. During our entire relationship, she had never once expressed concern about my female friends. She had hung out with them at gatherings herself. Erica kept reading. Rule number 3. Household responsibilities will be divided equally, with the understanding that emotional labor falls primarily to the husband to initiate. What does that even mean? I asked. Sabrina leaned forward. It means you do not wait to be asked to notice what needs to be done. You anticipate. You manage. You take responsibility for the emotional climate of the home. I looked around at these 4 women who had apparently decided my fate. Let me get this straight, I said. You want me to manage money like I am a teenager with an allowance, abandon friendships you now find threatening, and become a mind reader for household chores. You are oversimplifying, Renee said, but her voice had an edge. Am I? Because it sounds like you spent our honeymoon planning how to restructure my life. Erica was not finished. Rule number 4. Weekly marriage check-ins to discuss any issues or concerns with your full presence. With you 4 present? I asked. Renee laughed. Oh no, just us. But I will keep the girls updated on our progress. Progress. As if I were a project under development. Rule number 5. Social media boundaries, including no liking or commenting on posts from single women or former girlfriends. Rule number 6. Weekend plans require mutual agreement, with priority given to family and couple time. And the list kept going. There were restrictions on where I could go alone, requirements for checking in throughout the day, expectations about how often I should initiate conversations about our relationship, guidelines for how I should interact with her family. By the time they finished, I had counted 14 separate rules, 14 ways my life was about to become a carefully monitored, pre-approved existence. So, Renee said brightly, what do you think? The room went quiet. 4 expectant faces stared at me, waiting for compliance. I stood up. I think this is the most elaborate manipulation I have ever witnessed. The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. Excuse me, Renee said. You heard me. This is not about establishing healthy boundaries. This is about control, complete and total control. Sabrina crossed her arms. These are reasonable expectations for a mature marriage. Reasonable. I laughed, without humor. You want to regulate my friendships, monitor my spending down to $50, and have weekly performance reviews on my behavior as a husband. That is not marriage. That is a prison sentence with better decorating. Renee stood too, her face flushing. These are not restrictions. They are guidelines for respect. Respect. I looked directly at her. When exactly were you planning to respect me enough to discuss any of this before you decided it? When were you going to respect me enough not to ambush me with a committee in my own living room? We are not judges, Tiffany protested. We are friends offering support. Support, I repeated. Is that what you call it when you sit in someone's house with a printed list of demands? Renee's mask was starting to slip. You are being dramatic. Every successful marriage has boundaries. And every successful marriage negotiates those boundaries between the two people actually in the marriage, I said, not through a focus group of outside opinions. I looked at each of them in turn. Here's what I think really happened. You all spent months, maybe years, planning this little intervention. You waited until after the wedding, when you thought I would be trapped, and then you decided to unveil your master plan. The silence was deafening. The problem is, you made one critical miscalculation, I continued. You assumed I would go along with it. You assumed that because I love my wife, I would accept being treated like a child managed by committee. Renee's face reddened. You are twisting this into something it is not. Am I? Because from where I'm standing, this looks exactly like what it is. For women who decided that my autonomy, my friendships, and my basic adult decision-making are less important than your need to control every aspect of how I live. I turned to Renee specifically. And you have been planning this throughout our entire relationship, have you not? That is not, she started. Here is your first taste of how I handle boundaries, I said. I do not negotiate with committees. I do not accept ultimatums disguised as guidelines. And I do not let anyone turn my marriage into supervised probation. I looked at Erica, who still held the rule book. You can keep your list, but add one more rule. Rule 15. What happens when your husband refuses to play along? The room erupted. All four started talking at once, voices rising. Immature, unreasonable, commitment issues. But I was done listening. I was watching my wife's face as her carefully orchestrated plan fell apart in real time. What I saw told me everything I needed to know about who I had really married. After her friends left in a cloud of offended huffs and dramatic door slams, Renee switched tactics. Gone was the reasonable tone from the presentation. In its place was something I had never seen before, and it was not pretty. You humiliated me in front of my closest friends, she said, her voice shaking with rage. I defended myself against an ambush, I said. There is a difference. She paced the living room like a caged animal. Those women have successful marriages. They were trying to help us avoid the mistakes they made. By controlling every aspect of my existence. That sounds like a recipe for bliss. She whirled on me. You know what your problem is? You're selfish. You cannot see past your own wants to understand what a partnership requires. I sat back down, studying her. This was not the woman I dated for 2 years. This was not even the woman I married 3 days ago. This was someone else entirely. Explain how giving up my basic autonomy makes me a better partner, I said. It is not about giving up autonomy. It is about showing respect. It is about proving that our marriage comes first. Respect, I said. Like the respect you showed me by planning this ambush. Like the respect you showed by discussing our private relationship with your friend for months before including me. Her face twisted with frustration. Everything does not have to be discussed to death. Some things are just common sense. Common sense like requiring permission to spend $50 of my own money. It is not your money anymore, she said. It is our money. That is what marriage means. A cold feeling settled in my chest. Our money managed according to rules I had no input in creating, I said. She sat down across from me, shifting into what I was starting to recognize as her manipulation face. Soft features, concerned eyes, the voice she used when she wanted something. Look, I know this is an adjustment. Marriage is hard at first. If you could just try to see it from my perspective. Your perspective, I said, the one where you get to restructure my life without my consent and call it partnership. I'm not restructuring your life. I'm trying to build our life together by eliminating everything in my life that you and your friends find inconvenient. She reached for my hands. I pulled them back. Do not touch me like that. Like what? Like you're trying to calm down a difficult child. I am your husband, not a problem to manage. Her mask slipped again, and I saw the flash of cold anger underneath. Fine, she said. You want to do this the hard way? Let us do it the hard way. She went to the kitchen, rummaging through drawers. When she returned, she was holding a piece of paper. What is that? I asked. Our joint bank account information, she said. The one we set up last week. What about it? Maybe you were right. Maybe we rushed some financial decisions. Perhaps we should keep things separate for a while until we figure out how to work as a team. The threat was crystal clear. Agree to her rules or lose access to our shared finances. You are threatening to cut me off from money we both contributed, I said. I'm suggesting we reevaluate our financial partnership, she replied. If you cannot handle the responsibility of joint finances, maybe you are not ready for them. I stared at her, watching this person I thought I knew reveal herself layer by layer. What else? I asked. What else? What other threats do you have lined up? What other ways are you planning to force compliance? She tilted her head, pretending to consider the question. Well, there's our social calendar. Dinner with your parents next week. That barbecue at your friend's house this weekend. I would hate for those to become awkward because we are having marital problems. You are threatening to embarrass me in front of my family and friends, I said. I am pointing out that our relationship status affects our social obligations, she replied. If we are not on the same page, maybe we should not present ourselves as a happy couple. The manipulation was so blatant, it was almost impressive. Here is another thought, she continued. My friends were really hurt by how you treated them today. They're starting to wonder if I made a mistake marrying someone who could be so disrespectful. And you care about their opinion because they're my support system. Because their husbands are your potential social circle. Burning bridges with them means burning half her social life. A cold clarity settled over me. This was not a woman struggling to adjust to marriage. This was a calculated campaign designed to break down my resistance and force my compliance. You know what is fascinating? I asked. 2 days ago, you told me how much you love my independence, how attractive you found my confidence, how much you respected that I had my own opinions. I still do, she said. No, you do not, I replied. You loved those things right up until the moment you thought you owned me. Then every quality you claimed to admire became a problem to be fixed. Her expression hardened. That is not true, is it not? When did my financial independence become selfishness? When did my friendships become threats? When did my ability to make my own decisions become immaturity? She opened her mouth, but I kept going. I will tell you when. The moment you thought the wedding ring gave you the right to reprogram me into whatever version of a husband you and your committee decided was acceptable. The silence stretched. So here's my question, I said finally. How long did you think it would take? How long for what? She asked. How long to break me down completely? To turn me into one of those hollow-eyed husbands your friends married? The ones who ask permission to buy a cup of coffee and apologize for having opinions. Her face went pale. Because that is what this is really about. You do not want a partner. You want a project. I stood and walked toward the stairs. Where are you going? To pack. Pack for what? I turned back to the stranger wearing my wife's face. To leave. Because I may have said I do 3 days ago, but I did not say I surrender. She made a sound between a gasp and a growl. You cannot just leave. We are married. Watch me, I said. I did not leave that night. Not because I changed my mind, but because I realized I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with before my next move. You do not walk away from a chess game without studying your opponent's strategy. While she was in the shower, crying, muttering about how unreasonable I was being, I did something I had never done before. I looked through her phone. What I found made my blood run cold. There was a group chat called Project Management. At first, I thought it was work-related, but as I scrolled, I realized the project they were managing was me and every other husband in their circle. The messages went back months, before the wedding, even back to when we were still dating. Phase 1 complete. Renee had written 2 weeks after we got engaged. He proposed exactly when and how we predicted. Moving to Phase 2. Phase 2 involved what they called conditioning, Subtle changes in behavior designed to test my reactions and establish patterns of compliance. Tested the financial control angle today. She wrote a month before the wedding. Asked him to check with me before buying that new drill he wanted. He did it without questioning. Good sign. I remember that conversation. She had framed it as wanting to be included in decisions that affected our shared space. I thought it was sweet. Movie night manipulation worked perfectly. Read another message. He canceled plans with the guys to stay home with me. The guilt approach is definitely effective with this one. That night, I had been looking forward to a basketball game with friends I had not seen in months. She mentioned feeling a little lonely. I canceled without a second thought, thinking I was being a caring fiancé. The messages that really made me sick were the ones where they compared notes on their different subjects. Update on Project David. Vanessa wrote, financial lockdown is 85% complete. He has not made a purchase over $30 without asking in 6 months. Social isolation is at about 60%. Still working on the friend elimination protocol. David. I knew David. Married to one of Renee's friends. 2 years ago, he had been outgoing, confident. The last time I saw him, he was a shadow, constantly checking his phone, asking permission for everything, apologizing for having opinions. Now I knew why. Project Caleb showing excellent progress. Read another update. Complete social media compliance achieved. No interactions with unapproved female contacts in 4 months. Financial transparency protocol fully implemented. Weekly performance reviews going smoothly. Caleb was another guy in their circle. I had watched his transformation, too, and chalked it up to married life. I had been an idiot. The messages kept coming. A detailed chronicle of psychological manipulation disguised as marriage advice. Remember, Renee wrote to the group, the key is gradual implementation. If you try to implement all protocols at once, you risk rebellion. The frog in boiling water approach works best. Post-wedding implementation should be swift, but not sudden, she continued. The first 30 days are critical. That is when you establish the new normal. If you can get them to accept the basic framework in the first month, everything else becomes much easier. My anger built with every line. Warning signs to watch for, Sabrina wrote. Questioning the rules instead of asking for clarification. Refusing to discuss issues in front of the support group. Any mention of before we were married as a comparison point. These are red flags that indicate the subject is not properly conditioned. That is what I was to them, a subject. If resistance is encountered, Sabrina continued, escalate to phase 3 protocols immediately. Financial pressure, social isolation threats, and family embarrassment tactics are usually sufficient to regain compliance. Phase 3. I had just experienced Phase 3. The message that sealed it was from Renee, sent that very morning while she prepared the ambush. Day 1 of implementation today. If this goes according to plan, Project Jason should be fully integrated into the program within 2 weeks. His conditioning responses have been excellent so far. High confidence in successful completion. Project Jason. That was me. I scrolled further back, looking for the beginning. What I found was even worse. New project identified. Renee had written over 2 years ago, right after our 3rd date. Subject shows high potential for successful integration. Independent but not stubborn. Confident but not arrogant. Financially stable. Socially connected. Family-oriented. Perfect candidate. Project Jason Phase 1 initiated, she wrote a week later. Beginning subtle testing protocols. Will report progress weekly. 2 years. 2 years of manipulation, testing, and conditioning. 2 years of her pretending to be someone she was not while systematically evaluating my weaknesses and planning my eventual psychological imprisonment. Phase 1 milestone achieved, she wrote 6 months in. Subject is emotionally invested and beginning to prioritize project manager preferences over previous patterns. Isolation from potential interference sources can begin. I remember that period. She started having problems with some of my friends. Little complaints, subtle criticisms, hurt expressions. I began seeing them less, thinking I was being a good boyfriend. Project Jason Phase 2 complete, she wrote after our 1st year. Subject is now reliably modifying behavior based on project manager's emotional state. Financial transparency increasing. Social circles successfully filtered. Ready for engagement protocol. Even my proposal had been part of their plan. Engagement achieved, she wrote the day after I proposed. Project Jason now entering final phase before implementation. All preliminary objectives met. Subject fully committed and unaware of true project scope. The words burned themselves into my brain. Then yesterday, Project Jason implementation begins tomorrow. 2 years of preparation, culminating in full system deployment. This is going to be our best transformation yet. Cannot wait to show you all the finished product. The finished product. That is what she expected me to become. I closed the phone and sat on the edge of the bed, processing. My entire relationship had been a lie. Every sweet moment, every loving gesture, every time she told me she loved me exactly as I was, it was all part of an elaborate con. But once you see the game, you cannot unsee it. And once you understand the rules, you can start playing by your own. I opened the phone again and took screenshots. Every message, every protocol, every piece of evidence documenting their systematic manipulation of multiple men. They had made one critical error. They assumed I would never find out. 2 days later, I executed my own protocol. Unlike Renee's 2-year campaign, mine was surgical, swift, and devastating. I called a family dinner, both sets of parents, her sister, my brother. Important marriage announcement, I told them. Renee was thrilled, certain I had surrendered to her program. We gathered at her parents' house on Sunday evening. Everyone expected news about future grandchildren or maybe a house purchase. Instead, they got a masterclass in exposing psychological manipulation. I wanted everyone here. I began because I have discovered something about our marriage that affects all of us. Renee was beaming, still thinking this was going according to plan. I pulled out printed copies of the group chat messages. Every protocol, every manipulation technique, every reference to Project Jason and to the other men they had systematically broken down. For the past 2 years, I said, I have been the subject of what your daughter calls Project Jason. The silence was immediate and complete. I handed copies to both sets of parents. Page 3 shows her initial assessment of me as a perfect candidate for manipulation. Page 7 details the conditioning protocols she used during our engagement. Page 12 outlines the implementation strategy that began with yesterday's ambush. Renee's face went from confusion to panic to rage in 10 seconds. That is private, she hissed. Privacy, I said calmly, is something you forfeited when you turned our relationship into a group project. Her father read with growing horror. What is this about financial lockdowns and social isolation? Your daughter and her friends have developed a systematic approach to psychologically breaking down men after marriage, I said. They call it project management. They compare notes, celebrate milestones in their subject's degradation, and coach each other through resistance. Renee stood, face red with fury. You are taking this completely out of context. Context, I replied. Like referring to me as the subject for 2 years. Like celebrating when you manipulated me into canceling plans with friends. Her mother stared at the pages in shock. Honey, did you really write these things? It is not what it looks like, Renee began, but her father cut her off. It looks like you have been lying to this man for your entire relationship. I addressed the room. The woman you all thought you knew does not exist. For 2 years, she has been playing a character designed to make me fall in love with someone who was never real. Renee tried one last manipulation. I love you. Everything I did was to make our marriage stronger. I looked at her. You do not love me. You love the idea of controlling me. There is a difference. Her sister spoke. This is insane. You are destroying your marriage over some text messages. No, I said, standing. She destroyed our marriage the moment she decided I was a project instead of a partner. I gathered the papers. The marriage is over. I will be filing for annulment tomorrow on grounds of fraud. She can explain to her friends that Project Jason has been permanently discontinued. As I walked to the door, I heard Renee's voice, no longer sweet or manipulative, but raw with desperation. You cannot do this. We are married. I turned back and, for the first time in days, smiled. Watch me. The last thing I heard as I left was her mother asking, What have you done? What she had done was underestimate the man she thought she could control. The annulment went through faster than anyone expected. It turns out documented evidence of systematic fraud makes legal proceedings remarkably straightforward. But the real satisfaction came from watching the entire project management network collapse in real time. Within a week, David called me. Did you really expose that group chat? Every word of it, I said. Man, my wife has been in crisis mode for days, he said. She keeps asking if I knew about the messages. Did you? Are you kidding? I thought I was just being a good husband. I had no idea I was part of some experiment. The ripple effect was immediate. Once the other men saw the evidence, they started recognizing the patterns in their own marriages, the conditioning, the gradual isolation, the erosion of autonomy. Caleb filed for separation 2 weeks later. I spent 3 years asking permission to exist in my own life, he told me over coffee. I forgot what it felt like to make my own decisions. The women's group disbanded completely. It is hard to maintain a manipulation network when your subjects know they are being manipulated. Renee tried damage control, reaching out through mutual friends with a story about how I misunderstood everything. But screenshots do not lie, and her explanations grew more desperate each time. She even tried the direct approach, showing up at my apartment 3 weeks after the annulment. Can we talk? She asked. We have nothing to discuss, I said. I made mistakes, she pleaded, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling. I almost laughed. Counseling? So you can learn better manipulation techniques. It was not manipulation, she said. I was trying to build a strong marriage. You were trying to build a prison, I replied. The fact that you still cannot see the difference tells me everything I need to know. She tried tears next. Please, I love you. No, I said. You love control. You love the idea of owning someone. You do not love me, because you never bother to learn who I actually am. That is not true, she whispered. Prove it, I said. Tell me one thing you love about me that is not something you try to change. She opened her mouth, then closed it. The silence confirmed the truth. 6 months later, I ran into her at a coffee shop. She was with a guy who looked vaguely familiar, probably another perfect candidate. She saw me and tried to wave like we were old friends who had simply drifted apart. I ignored her completely. Respect is not something you earn by submitting to manipulation. It is something you maintain by refusing to accept it. My life now looks like it did before I met her, except better. I make my own decisions, spend my own money, maintain my own friendships, and answer nobody but myself. The friends I had started avoiding during her conditioning welcomed me back without questions. The confidence she spent 2 years trying to erode came back stronger than ever. And the best part, I now know what to watch for. The subtle tests, the gradual boundary pushing, the friend group that seems a little too interested in your relationship dynamics. I have helped 3 other men recognize similar patterns in their own relationships. It is amazing how obvious manipulation becomes once you know what to look for. As for Renee, last I heard she was single. Word travels fast when someone gets exposed for systematic psychological manipulation. Her rule book became a handbook for losing friends and partners, just like I predicted. Sometimes I wonder if she ever figured out where she went wrong. If she ever realized the problem was not my resistance to her program, but the program itself. But I do not wonder long. I am too busy living the life she tried to take away from me. And it is exactly the life I choose to live. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share this video with your friends. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a powerful story drop.